All right, you sick bastards. Anybody who's here to talk about this awful game after Rutgers lost at home, after being favored by 2.5 points against the Wisconsin Badgers, lost 42-7. If you haven't listened before, welcome. This will be fun for your first time. I'm your host, Mike Broadbent. Joining me once again is my co-host, Richie O'Leary, Rutgers beat writer Out Kraut Hamill, and the host of the Night Watch podcast, Larry Kay. This is basically an intervention for this program right now, because this was seen as an inflection point game where we were playing a team that was on a similar plane to us, a team that is also dealing with some injuries, a team that is down to its backup running backs, down to its backup quarterback, and largely seen as a game that we should have won. I think all of us predicted them to beat Wisconsin headed into the season, if I remember correctly. And we got absolutely dog walked today. We did not belong on the same turf as these guys. We didn't belong in the same conference as these guys. We didn't belong on the same division of these guys. Rutgers did not look competitive at any point in this game. They did not look like they were ready to play. Greg said as much, or he didn't say it, but he didn't deny it either in his post-game presser when Steve Politi asked him why the team was not ready to play today. I will open the floor. Whoever would like to talk first, feel free. This is an open session. Just raise your hand and you can get the baton passed to you, or whatever they do in group therapy sessions. We'll do that today. I've got my screen pillow here. So if anyone needs their screen pillow at home, feel free to grab it. And anytime you need to, just put your face into it and let loose, because this is going to be a long, upsetting podcast.
Someone go. Alex,
Rich.
go for it.
I was going to say, I was going to get my screen pillow.
Oh, here we go.
Yeah, everyone get
But
your
as you
screen
can
pillows
see,
up.
I'm already having a pretty bad football weekend after a really bad loss on Thursday Night Football. So we're just going to throw that away. Yeah, this was really bad. I would say this was the worst performance of the Greg Schiano 2.0 era when you factor in expectations. I think Iowa and Maryland last year kind of lead up to that as well. But I think this is definitely the worst one. I mean, they completely fell flat on their face in almost every aspect of the game. Offense, defense, special teams. I mean, they won the turnover battle, couldn't get any points off those turnovers. They got a missed field goal and couldn't do anything with that either. They didn't score until late in the third quarter when the game was basically already in reach. There's just there's a lot to go through. I mean, the passing game looked disjointed once again. The run game just couldn't get that push that we saw from earlier in the season. Monunga ended up getting some nice yards after when the game was almost already in hand and got his touchdown, which was good to see. There were a lot of drops in the passing game. Stat broadcast is saying 4. I counted more. I don't really know what their definition of drops are, but I definitely felt like there was more than 4. The defense, they allowed 549 yards. I mean, there's not much else to say other than that. Braden Locke looked really comfortable in the pocket. He found success on a few different deep balls. Tyway Walker, I forget how you pronounce his name. 24 carries, 198 yards, 3 touchdowns. I mean, he was getting big play after big play. Just a performance that you could not afford to have in this part of the season, because this was a swing game for Rutgers. This was the swing game. You either go 4-2 and maybe your special season is looking like it's on the brink, or you go 5-1 and you take down one of those Big Ten traditional powers that you'd never beaten before, and you're back on track after a tough loss last week on the road, and you're on your way. But now things are kind of up in the air, and that's not even factoring in the injuries. I mean, you're already down Tyreen Powell and Robert Longerbeam for this game. You lose Sam Brown for, at least what we might think might be for a long term. It looked really ugly on the replay. I hope he's okay, obviously. I really feel for him what he's had to go through with just injury luck after injury luck. When he's healthy, he looks like a potential NFL back, but unfortunately his health has not he has not had the best luck when it comes to health. Tyreen Powell, Robert Longerbeam both out. Aaron Lewis got dinged up at one point. He ended up coming back in. Flip Dixon got dinged up a couple times. So I think this week is going to be a crucial week to look in the mirror. You have a quote unquote get right game with UCLA, but when you're in the Big Ten, aside from maybe Purdue and UCLA, there's not a ton of those. So you have to come out on homecoming weekend and really get that punch in the mouth. And that's the thing that Rutgers hasn't had these last few games. They have not had that punch to start. That's what's gotten them so much success. When they're playing from ahead, they really feel comfortable. They're not as comfortable playing from behind, and that's what they have not been able to do. Really, since the half turned in that Washington game, this has not been the same team as we saw in the first 3 games. So I've said my first piece. I went on for a while, so I'll let anyone else ramble along.
I'll jump in. I mean, I think, just what you said, it's a pivotal game in the type of season where you need to stack up some wins in what we would have called a toss-up game. The line is 2.5, goes down to 1.5 right before kickoff. I understand you have injuries, and obviously maybe an injury amounts to a loss. Maybe an injury amounts to a close loss or squeaking out a win. But injuries, even the ones we've had, should not amount to being completely run off the field, your home field, in a season where you are supposed to be not at the pinnacle maybe of the program you envision, but at the pinnacle of this specific chapter of Greg 2.0 in the rebuild. These are senior players who have returned. Wisconsin is not having a great year. Now, in hindsight, at the end of the year, maybe they got their stuff together and got better, but they weren't at a level, I don't think, and even Wisconsin fans, most of them were saying this, and most analysts, they're not at a level where they should be running us completely off the field and embarrassing us. And what I think is most concerning to me, I understand the Felter injury is absolutely a rough one. I said it when he went down and came back in the game. I thought we were saved that he came back. He's a mauler, all those things. However, that's one player on the whole offensive line. Understand Taj White goes down, second play of the game. But there was a lack of intensity, I thought. I mean, I don't know. I'm not in the locker room. I'm not, in the trenches with these guys. But that edge, that chop, that Schiano attitude, I didn't feel it. I feel like this level of defeat. Now, look, the defense goes out, gets a turnover, a couple turnovers. At what point does the absolute ineptitude of the offense get to a point where the defense is just not as inspired anymore and just starts to lose faith? And little things that used to put us over the top with Greg, like special teams, even before the half, like Kirk, you don't have any, forget a trick play. Trick play would be cool, but you don't have anything a little bit outside the box, a little bit imaginative, just because there's under a minute to go and we just capitalized on a turnover to change the course of the game. There's absolutely no imagination, no edge. And honestly, I'm kind of beaten into just like a depression, and not a depression of sadness, but literally just not caring. Like I got beat so bad today that I'm not even that angry, because I'm just like, wow, is this just what we are? Like, we'll never get over that hump, because that's how it feels today, getting destroyed by another traditional power that was having a down year, and we were supposed to be having an up year.
Yeah, I mean, you guys said it all. There's just so many issues right now. Quarterback throwing behind receivers. Wide receivers not being able to catch a single thing. Ben Black had 8 targets, 1 catch. Chris Long had 1 catch on 3 or 4 targets. Christian Dremel played like 10 snaps and led the team in receiving. Like,
yeah,
that's insane.
With 2 catches.
Yeah, like it's absolutely insane. Offensive line can't block. Like you said before, the backups aren't as are. I guess we said it offline. The backups just aren't able to fill in the role of what the starters were. Like Felter, you mentioned before, Larry is out, and now they tried Dante Chin, and then he got taken out. They tried Taj White, he gets hurt. They put in Terrence Salami at guard, and I'm like, oh my, like what we're just giving up on Dante Chin now? You also like Nick Oliveri, we're just going to throw in a random preferred walk on. Okay, sure, fuck it, why not, right? Defense just gave up so much. Special teams are getting kicks blocked against them now. It's just this was an all around like shitty effort, and I think it probably, you can't say it starts with the offense, but like the offense,
starts with the offense.
There's so many issues there. Like it's just so boring. It's such a basic. It's like ask Madden, and they're just like, hey, you have a good running back, run up the middle, run up the middle, run up the middle. All right, throw to that tight end. All right, now throw to Chris Long. All right, now throw to tight end. Now throw to Chris Long. It's like they don't do anything else. Like it's just so fucking boring. Like, and is that Kirk Schrocker's MO? I guess a little bit, but like, you got to do something when you're in the red zone twice. You're +2 in the turnover category at halftime. You're in the red zone twice. You're in like you're in scoring position. Like you got to be able to put points on the fucking board. That's 8 quarters of 14 total points. Like that's, I don't even know. I'm done.
0 points in the first 3 quarters of the last 2 games combined against Nebraska and against Wisconsin. This isn't the worst loss I've seen as a Rutgers fan. This is the most disappointing loss I've endured as a Rutgers fan, though.
I mean, Michigan.
Because the expectations are elevated this year with the guys who are returning, with the players that we have in the program. Like, at no point today did I feel like the returning Big Ten leader in rushing was a factor. You know, he looks, the stat line looks better than it is, but I think he started the game like 11 carries for 22 yards, just getting bottled up. There was the first 5 offensive drives we had today, 1 first down. There was a drive today in the first half where we went 3 and out, and all 3 of the plays were drops by our receivers, 2 by Kenny Fletcher, and I think 1 by Chris Long. Like, who wants to be out there at this point? Like, is everyone just like giving up? Because that's what it felt like in the stadium, is that nobody really gave a shit. Now, I know that's not the case, but nobody stepped up. There was nobody grabbing people by the face mask, nobody, getting players right. Like, there's just no fire or intensity. And I don't know if that's like a leadership issue, like Mohamed Touré brought that last year, but there's certainly nobody who's got it on the team right now. And I'm just like tired of devoting entire days of my life, weeks of my life, doing podcasts, writing up fucking stories about this team to get this kind of effort on a Saturday. Like, I get it. Like, I'm a little obsessed. I'm a super fan. Like, I probably dedicate too much of my time to this to begin with, but this effort was totally like, I don't mind losing big if it was, a couple lucky bounces one way or the other. We ended up losing by 20 points. This was not that. We were not in the atmosphere of competition this entire game. Like, we were lucky to score, period. Like, we couldn't, they could put the ball at the 10-yard line every single drive that we had, and we still weren't winning this game because we couldn't score. We couldn't get a field goal attempt off cleanly. Like, I don't know if it was the snap or the hold from where I was watching it, but that was not a clean, look by the. We've had 2 games now and or two blocks in 3 games, which is so uncharacteristic. Like, I don't know. Like, there's no more Akrons on the schedule. There's no more freaking Howards on the schedule. Every team's going to have a pulse. So if we're going to put this effort out, like, we're not going to make a bowl. Now, Schiano talked about in his presser, how the first question from Politi, I think we might have covered this on the pod, but if not, I'll refresh everyone, was why wasn't the team ready to play today? And Schiano said, I don't know, Steve. That's my job to know, and I don't know. If you don't know as the coach, you can't point to anything that was like, this, that. If he's dumbfounded by why this team looked totally, sleepwalking all day, like, how are any of us supposed to feel better about this team if the coach has no guidance whatsoever? And this is the second straight week now that the offense has been like Chris Ash level bad. I know that's like saying Voldemort's name in here, but like, there's nothing to be inspired by this program right now. And I get it. We're dealing with injuries. I get it that it's the part of the season where, you can hit lulls, but like, Wisconsin's on the way up. You look at USC. USC's winning by 2 touchdowns at halftime against Penn State. We're not going into the Coliseum and beating that team. Yeah, Richie's, that's a great meme. And it's the Scooby-Doo meme where he pulls the mask off and it's actually Chris Ash the whole time. Hold on a sec.
Richie, you're a braver man than I.
Yeah, I was like, dude, it's just such a bad offense. Like,
let's talk about that, right? Like, like what you just said with Greg. What is with you're talking about lack of an edge. Well, he's playing scared. He's trying to eke out wins. He admitted in a presser last week that he doesn't field punts. It's like a team philosophy.
No, wait, they did. They fielded a kick return for the first time ever today. Wow. And guess where they got to? The fucking 25.
See? But you play that with that mentality. At what point does your team start to lose faith in their own edge? Because you're not taking any risks. You're thinking you're going to squeak out and sneak out a good, memorable season week after week. I understand some games play that way, but at some point you got to take some chances and do some things and shake it up and show the team you have confidence in them so they have the edge. That was the old Schiano. We're the underdog. We have the edge. Now it's like we're going to go in a shell and squeak out because Wisconsin struggles and Nebraska struggles in these areas. No, like, go out, do something innovative. Where is that? We saw it even in 2.0 earlier in his tenure. Where is it this year?
Yeah, especially on like, these 4th down situations. Like, how many times are we going to line up in shotgun and try and, run like a stretch outside run to Kyle Monangai? Why are we not running tush push? Why are we not doing, like, think of the first few games where we ran a tush push to set up, the Fumblerooski tush push. Like, that kind of stuff. There's no more layering of concepts in this offense. It's just like playing freaking Battleship on offense where they're just like running their fingers along a playbook and tapping the screen. Like, There's no innovation, like you said. There's no inspiration. They're just kind of like going through the motions, and that doesn't work on offense.
Maybe he's got to pull like a Steve Peichel and just get the crowd wrong, like just turn around, just start getting people hyped, and then I don't know. You are right though. There is nothing going on with this team. It's very boring. It's very blah. They came out flat, and I mean flatter than flat. There's so many issues. Like it's the entire offense as a whole. Like there's your leading receiver played 10 snaps. Your best receiver is an FCS transfer. I just saw Jay Poole's tweet on this. He brought up a lot of good points. Like they're in year 5. This should be fixed at this point, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, losing like this in year 1 or year 2 is something that you can build on. Something you can say, this is what a program that's being built has to deal with. It. Progress isn't always linear, blah, blah, blah. That kind of stuff, those platitudes are acceptable. They're tolerable when you can kind of see some kind of light at the end of the tunnel. But we're supposed to have reached the top of that hill on the roller coaster, and it's supposed to be smooth sailing now. It's supposed to look fluid, and the fluidity is not there. It looks like we're, so far away from where we even started the season at, which I think why the frustration for the most part is so palpable amongst most fans.
Well, I think what you said, I think you said it off air before we started about Schiano's answer about the first string. He kind of said, sometimes guys step up because of an injury and everybody's like, there's a revelation. Wow, where'd this guy come from? But then he said, but normally they were backups. If they were that guy who would have emerged, they would have been first string. Here's what's a revelation about that answer. I'm not saying we are at the pinnacle of the talent he would like to build in terms of recruiting and whatnot, but we were kind of led to believe, and not just led to believe, but if you look at the upperclassmen on the team and the talent we brought in that he says he targets guys he's going to develop, we thought this iteration, like you said, at the top of the hill, this pipeline was at least somewhat full. You're telling me that some first stringers go down here. Now, I know linebacker has been pretty decimated. I understand that. But O-line, other places, like, he's now talking openly about the fact that second string guys, they're second string guys. Like, come on, man. I thought this was a pipeline. Wisconsin has a bunch of injuries. Malusi's not playing, okay? That's I know he had a competition this offseason, but that's still their backup quarterback who looked pretty good. And by the way, they came out and got off schedule a little bit and surprised us, and that kid was able to make some throws. So I don't know. I don't buy that excuse. If this is all we've got in the pipeline right now, that's a big concern.
Greg, you joining us now. We haven't heard any of your blazing hot takes, but I'm sure you got something. What's your how was your experience of the game?
Could have been better, I'll be honest. Wasn't exactly the best game I've ever seen, but I'm sure you guys have been just talking about it throughout when I haven't been here. But it's just, I think that right now the team is really. I mean, today was just. I thought last week was going to be the wake up call for this team to really, kick it into gear, get the coaching, get that under control, and just really focus on being really Wisconsin's not terrible, but they're not. I don't think they're that good, to be honest. Like that was the thing about going into this game that I thought to myself, okay, Rutgers. This is more about Rutgers' performance than more so really the win to me. Because I could see where Rutgers maybe, just they don't win this game. But if they looked at least like good, like I could come away and look at the rest of their schedule, look at it next week against UCLA, look at upcoming against Maryland, look at end of the year against Michigan State, where those should be, if you can beat Wisconsin or even look competitive against Wisconsin, I think you'll be in good standing there to get 3 more wins. And if you got today 4, whatever it may be, and just really, really assert yourself back. But today was just really I was just stunned at how poor they played today in really every facet. Like last week, we commended the defense for really stepping up when they were kind of hearing about it the first few weeks. And so we kind of thought, okay, well, the offense had kind of their clunker last week and the defense, maybe they found their game. So if you can just get on the same page, then you can potentially beat Wisconsin. Like I said, beat those other upcoming teams. But this was every facet of the game was a disaster. The run defense, I mean, just was just awful. They gave up, I think it was 309 yards on the ground. I mean, it's just I was just like stunned. And the offense, I mean, they find them. This is the thing about the offense, and we've said it time and time again. Their identity is a team that pounds the rock and controls the tempo of the game, which that's a fine identity. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that, with considering who they have between Common Ungai. They had Samuel Brown. We'll see what happens with him, but that's a fine identity. But that can't be the only thing you do, because then you just become very what's the word? Very easy to, I guess, game plan against. And it's just like, you have to start mixing things up, just become, more diverse. It's just, I mean, it was like they were so you're down 14-0 before you even, you get settled in. And it's like, by the time Rutgers, the way their offense goes, by the time Rutgers can get back into this, it's like, who knows how it's going to be. That's why I think that Wisconsin basically took it easy and decided to go for that field goal. And I think it was a run to set up a field goal. And it's like, wow, it's like Fickle, you're kind of thinking to yourself, Fickle, well, he's kind of taking his foot off the gas here. And you got Rutgers while they're down, just keep going. But on the other side of the coin, it's like, is Rutgers going to come back from a 3-score deficit? And if they do, like, how much time is going to be left on the clock by the time they even get close? So really, just the whole thing right now, and Schiano talked about in his post-game presser that right now it's just about getting your own crap together before you even think about focusing on UCLA. I think UCLA is really, if Wisconsin is, let's just say Wisconsin's, not so good with UCLA. I mean, if you can't beat UCLA next week, I mean, things are not going to be good. And you can't just win against UCLA next week. You really got to start looking like the Rutgers team that we saw those first really, I guess, three games in 3 quarters. Because ever since that 4th quarter against Virginia Tech, this has kind of felt like a team that's been living on the edge. And today was just, you would think, hopefully the rock bottom for this avalanche of badness. But I guess we'll see.
If Rutgers beats UCLA by 1 score next week, will there be like a more downtrodden fan base of a 5-2 team in college football?
No.
Like,
this is why you don't hire a guy you fired before, like, ever. Like, that's that was a weird. I thought it was. I actually took him off the board, the OC Hot board, when we were putting it up, because I thought there was no shot you're going to rehire the dude you fired like 10 years ago. Like, maybe he's different. Maybe he's gotten better. Who knows? Clearly, it just seems like he's one-dimensional.
Anybody think about the fact that, speaking to your point, Richie, we start going the direction of like a running hybrid quarterback, innovative offensive mind type direction. Greg kind of like stops mid. He's like, forget it. We got to just pound the ball because we got Sam Brown that year. Goes out. He eventually hires Kirk. It looked like it was working at first, but is there something to be said for the fact that it looked like Schiano was coming in with like a brand new philosophy with offense and then kind of like stopped midstream and was like, no, let me go back to the old school way of doing it. We're not going to line up in an I formation pro style, but other than that, we're doing the same thing. Just people's thoughts on that, because it's interesting.
I kind of think he's playing to who he has, and look around the Big Ten. For the most part, this is how the teams, I think, around the Big Ten play, outside of really the USCs and the newcomers, and we said, we saw you guys talking about in the other pods, where it was like USC kind of runs that running gun type. They don't play this real ground and pound style of football, which some weeks it works, some weeks it doesn't. So I think they're really, and I mean, you have really one of arguably the best backs in college football in Kyle Monangai. So like that's where your offense kind of starts. So I think he was they're kind of just building around towards their strengths. But like I said before, this can be your identity, but this can't be the only thing that you do.
Yeah, I think, Larry, what you're kind of getting at is, when we hired Sean Gleason, I think everybody expected us to kind of do some unpredictable things. Like Sean Gleason, when he was coming over from Princeton, he was known for running these 2 quarterback sets. So you never really kind of knew what was going on. The first few years, like the amount of offense we manufactured seemingly out of thin air with like the Bo Meltons and Isaiah Pacheco's, we were more undermanned talent-wise then than we are now, but we were, making some big plays happen kind of out of thin air. We're not doing that anymore. If we're not having things set up perfectly, we're not moving the ball. Like, there is no plan B in the Kirk Soraka offense. If things don't go exactly to the game plan that they set up and the scripts and whatnot, like there's plenty of coaches who can script up the first 15 plays of any offensive game and do it really well. Like Andy Reid's note for that. Like, there's plenty of coaches who can do that. But then at some point you settle into what the game is and what the cadence is in a game. And we're just not settling into a game well. Like, every single game that's been competitive this year has been competitive in a sense because we've allowed it to be that way. Like, we should have beaten Nebraska last week. Nebraska gave us every opportunity to do it. We should have beaten Virginia Tech by almost 30 points. They gave us every opportunity to do it. Washington, we had every reason to beat them by more than we did. We have held ourselves back by this awful kind of, idea of what this team has to be. And we don't have a plan B or a plan C. We don't have a counterpunch when we get hit in the mouth. If we go down, there's no way we're coming back. You can give us today, you could have started the game over and given us 4 more quarters. There's no way at any point we're going to be leading that Wisconsin team because of the way we approach the game. So until the approach changes, I don't see how things result-wise are going to change. Like, the definition of insanity is trying the same thing over and over and expecting a different result. Like, at what point, like, we're not going to get these kind of beautiful results that we all would have hoped for because we're approaching this each game like freaking cavemen. We're thinking we're just going to like run up the gut with Kyle Monungai and he's going to make 3 defenders miss in the backfield and get 11 yards of carry. And that's just not going to happen. Like, maybe it'll happen against Howard. Maybe that'll happen against Akron. But remember, we struggled against both those teams to start the game too.
Yeah.
And, I was blown away by the level of effort that we had against Virginia Tech when we were looking back now, because, we look like a totally different team on September 21st than we do October 12th. This is, if you would have like taken us from a time machine, end of the game on Virginia Tech to where we are at the current moment, we all would have, slit our throats. It just would have been terrible. Like, we couldn't have imagined being in this position after starting where we were. So I don't know. I'm just pretty disillusioned right now because I don't see how things change the rest of the season, despite us being 4-2 right now.
I'm going to have to double check this, but someone just sent me a text and they said that you can fact check it if you want, but that Kirk Shiraka in his career as an offensive coordinator has only won 1 game in his career when down 10 or more.
I think I know who sent you that.
Yeah, probably.
I think I'll let someone know. That sounds like a lot of effort to fact check. So
I'm going to go back and look into it. But like, again, like what I was saying before, like, this is 5 recruiting cycles now, and you still don't have this together. Like, look at Brett Bielema in year 4. They're about to be, they're ranked. I think they're ranked, or they were ranked, whatever. About to be 5-1, and they don't have a tight end who's a converted. Your tight end 1 who's a converted defensive end. And I'm reading right off Jay Poole's tweet. Best receivers in FCS transfer. The best wide receiver today played 10 fucking snaps. Like,
or that
might be less than that, to be honest.
Look at Kurt Cignetti in his first year at Indiana.
Another one, yeah.
He's gonna start like 8 or 9-0. Like, look at the next few games he's got. They got a bye, then they play Nebraska at home, they play Washington at home, they go on the road for Michigan State. They're not losing any of those games.
Nope.
They're gonna be a CFP team in the first year under Cignetti. And they're going to make it probably before a Penn State. They're going to make it before a Michigan,
or not before Michigan. Right now. They're down.
Yeah, they're like, that's why it's so upsetting when people are like, "Oh, well, we're a developmental program, blah blah blah." It's like that's the path we've chose to, we're choosing to go down the bunny hill of the mountain, whereas you can choose to go down the Black Diamond, but you need to know how to ski, and we don't know how to ski.
Mm-hmm.
We know how to, if we keep our skis straight, we do pizza and French fry back and forth, pizza, French fry, we can make it to the bottom of the hill, but we're never going to do anything. We're never going to go off any jumps. We're never going to do a backflip because we're so focused on just getting to the bottom of the hill rather than actually doing anything meaningful.
Obviously, if you pizza before you French fry, you're going to have a bad time. This is, look, I know there's going to be a lot of takes about how Dremel should play more, but obviously, there is room for both Dremel and Demir Miller. I just don't know how you do it in the sets that Rutgers has been running all season. You have Demir Miller, who excels in the slot, and you have Christian Dremel, who excels in the slot. You can't really push one of them outside. I don't know if you try to go to – obviously, it's not going to happen, but you could go to more 4 receiver sets. Obviously, once again, probably not going to happen. It's just kind of a predicament that you're in because – this is the system. The system is the system. Just like, in a lot of the rooms at the Hale, the standard is the standard. The system is the system. You kind of have to roll with it now. And I don't really know how you do it because, again, Dremel looked pretty good in his limited snaps, but you're not going to play him over in the same position over a player who is better than him in Demir Miller, even if, the stats didn't exactly show it today.
The tight ends are whiffing on blocks, so fuck it. Run your 4 wide receiver set. Like, at this point,
it's a great point football-wise. They play the same position. Miller has been good. I've liked a lot of what I've seen out of Miller. He knows how to get open. He's got good hands. He's a good player. But see, those coaches, they got to give us the answer. You're right. There is no answer in this system. Figure it out, guys, because obviously the guys with the most hunger and whatever the edge, you're not getting them on the field. It's not the system. Totally valid point, especially for everybody out there clamoring for it. You're not going to replace Miller, but I don't know, do something to get them more involved. I don't know, because get your players that are going to make the most impact. The fact that he's a leading receiver on 10 snaps, he goes in, makes a good catch over his shoulder with like limited time. The first time we've seen him in the lineup for forever. I don't think it takes anything away from Miller, but I think it says, hey, find a way to get your best guys on there and get them the ball somehow. Now it's not, I don't know. Sometimes they try though, bro. And Ethan is either missing them or they're dropping it. So I don't know. It's all around.
Yeah, the drops were, I mean, Wisconsin only had one drop, and it was by Will Pauling, who ended up leaving the game with an injury. I guess we could talk about the defense. We talked a lot about the offense, deservedly so. We could talk about the defense a little bit more. I mean, there were some good and some bad, mostly bad, when you give up 550 yards of offense. I mean, looking at the leading tacklers, a lot of guys had a lot of tackles, but I think I mentioned this before. I might have mentioned this while we were live, but I might have said it before as well. It's not always a good thing when a lot of your guys at the second level are getting a lot of tackles, because I thought the linebacking unit struggled again. Granted, you're down 2 starters, 2 captains, when you factor in Mo Toure as well. So it's obviously going to take some adjusting, but I thought, Walker and Jabome, they just weren't taking some of the right angles in the run game, and that's what led to some of the broken containments. Timmy Hinespeeder, I always get his name wrong, saw a lot more action, I thought, today than he usually did in some of the past few games. I think he's a smart player. He knows where he's going. He makes a lot of right reads. He just doesn't have the size and strength to match up against some of these offensive linemen, particularly Wisconsin. I mean, Wisconsin is the prototypical get really big Midwestern guys on the offensive line and just run. And unfortunately, Hinespeeder just doesn't have the size to do it. I thought Bo Masco played admirably well. Al-Shadi Salam, again, I don't think he played all that well, but he's pressed into a tough situation. Less than a year, I think we're at like less than a calendar year, he transitioned from running back to cornerback, and now he's starting on the outside against Wisconsin. So it's just a tough position they've been put in. I thought Masco played a pretty good game once again. It was just tough. I mean, they both got beat a couple times deep. Unfortunately, particularly at that position, there's just not much you can do when you're down to your top guys. Rogers played some, not a whole lot. He was kind of rotating in and out, but yeah, it was a tough day for the defense.
I remember, Richie, when we were doing the preseason stuff, you jumped in, we were talking about offensive depth, and you're like, look, I don't think everybody's concerned about corner. You already said we were missing depth, early in the season. I think if you look at the defense from my perspective today, there's injuries and there's issues for certain. And despite that, in the second quarter, they held them to no points. So I'm not saying that the defense was good, because looking at the game on a whole, they haven't been. And even before the injuries, guys were getting to the second and third level on running plays, and the defense has been abysmal at tackling most games this season. And they've given a big play since Akron. They've given a big play since Howard, okay? So that's been a issue too. But when you're already struggling, you're struggling this year, period, and then you're also struggling in terms of having injuries. If you hold a team to no points in the second quarter, or no points last week, like in the second half, the offense at some point has got to help them out. And at some point, they're going to get more and more demoralized. They cause turnovers. We win the turnover battle. I mean, I'm not giving them props, but as bad as they have been in spots, they're still the least of our worries, which is, if they're that struggling that much and they're still the least of our worries, it's just so infuriating, because they gave us chances.
Yeah. We had ample opportunities to score in the first half. We had ample opportunities to get back in the game, whether it's one miscue after another. If it's not somebody dropping passes, it's a bad snap on a field goal. If it's not a bad snap on a field goal, it's guys whiffing on blocks. Like, everything is sloppy on offense right now. The defense, I'll give them credit. They have improved as the season's gone on. That's what you want to see, especially when you're replacing a lot of guys. The linebackers have looked better. Wes Bailey's been banged up. Aaron Lewis got banged up today. I don't think that they've played as well on the interior as they did last year, but at least you see the effort is still there. The improvement is at least somewhat upward trending. The offense is the total opposite. Like, the offense has gotten worse and worse as the season's gone on. And I think it's the brand of football they play is really tough to maintain, because you're just basically like running into a brick wall over and over and over, banging your head hard and hard and hard. And it's inducive of getting hurt. Like, you're going to get hurt playing this way. And the team is banged up in part due to the play style. Like, until we find a way that actually can move the ball, that isn't, getting in a car accident as a team play after play and getting your guys banged up, this is going to continue to go on a downward trend. There's no way that we can play this way against teams that have explosive athletes, like UCLA, or no, I'm sorry, like USC. Even like Minnesota's going to be a tough out. Illinois is going to be an absolute battle. Like, thankfully, Maryland looks like absolute crap. I don't know if anyone saw that game last night. They lost by 27 at home to Northwestern, who couldn't catch a cold in a friggin' sick ward. But there's very few opportunities to get right. Next week is probably the last one for a while. So unless we get a lobotomy over this week, well, I don't have much hope for this team. This is not a feeling I had until this game.
Agreed,
like last week, I felt like last week was an aberration. Like by the end of the game, we started to figure stuff out. But no, today was a continuation of the ugliness that we saw last week rather than a correction of the ugliness.
I was just going to say, I feel like if you want to start from anywhere to just try and clean this team up, it just starts. It's not sexy, but it's so easy yet so hard. I think it starts at the lines, really controlling the line of scrimmage, whether it's offensive line, really starting to, make holes for Kamanunga, because we talked about, I'm sure you guys talked about his first 11 carries. He ends up with 22 yards. You're down by multiple scores. And it's like, you basically have to abandon the running game at that point. So that's already out the window. And then the defensive line just felt like it just got carved up all day today. I mean, we talked about, 300 plus yards on the ground. It puts more pressure on the linebackers, who are just, like you said, taking bad angles and not really helping matters in the run game. And then it puts more pressure on the corners and Salam, who's out there, filling in for an injured longer beam. So it starts at the lines. It sounds so easy, yet it's not, and especially not in the Big Ten.
But you can't fix it at this point. Like, there's no depth on the offensive line. They're throwing Terrence Salami out there, who it might be decent as a center, as the backup center, but they're just throwing him out there over Chin. Chin was in, he sucked. Taj White was in, he struggled. Terrence Salami's coming in, he's struggling. Like, the line itself just has no depth. And then the defensive line, they threw everybody out there possible today. Zaire Angoy, Jordan Thompson, Jordan Walker, they threw everyone they could have thrown. Keyshawn Griffin, everyone.
Gabriel Abdul-Rahman a lot.
Abdul-Rahman, they are trying everyone on that line, and they're all getting pushed around with ease. And we didn't even bring this up, and this was mostly on defense, though. The substitutions, what the fuck? How can we not figure it out?
Terrible.
Yeah. It's like every play. There's Zaire Angoy was almost at the quarterback spot on the one run play that Wisconsin had. Like, he's running into the play from the sideline because he forgot to sub out or sub in. And it's like that happened, like, I want to say 1 or 2 times every drive. It's like, you guys got to get this shit together. I feel like that's got to be on the coaching staff 100%.
Well, did you guys talk about the fact that the 2 delay games coming out of a kickoff? I mean, I can see enough of this with the Jets, okay?
Yeah, particularly with the defensive line substitutions, I don't know what, because that's not exactly something that we've seen, at least not at all to this scale, at least this season, with the struggling to get guys in at the snap point. I don't know, because at one point they did force a Wisconsin timeout because, if the offense substitutes, the defense has time to substitute as well. I don't know if that was intentional. At one point, Schiano and Fickle both called timeouts, and Greg was trying to argue that Fickle called the timeout first. I don't know if that was intentional, but it definitely did not help things. And then you mentioned that getting a delay of game off of a kickoff, off a dead ball. I just don't know how that happens. I have a particularly bad taste in my mouth about the substitution problems because of a tweet that I made that I'll just leave it at that. That someone tried to troll me in my replies and it didn't go well for me. I'll just leave it at that. So the whole thing just feels bad.
Yeah, the whole thing did feel bad.
This is a great point. We brought Shedrick Rhodes in as a late transfer, and he has been able to see the field despite we're now on like the 3rd or 4th string at some positions on the line. Mm-hmm. For a guy who made 3.5 years of starts at a MAC program to not be able to crack the 3 deep for Rutgers is a huge sign that maybe it was a misevaluation there. We usually give the staff a lot of credit for being good evaluators of talent.
He was on the injury report again, to be fair.
Well,
I think he's been questionable every game so far.
And from what I was told today, they strictly like him at tackle. So they're not going to what, but I was told this offseason completely different. So I don't know. I was told he was a guard or tackle in the offseason. Now I'm being told he's just a tackle. That's why he's not playing. But
And it seemed like this Ohio offensive line at least was pretty good. I mean, now it didn't end up working well, but Kurt Daniker, another guy that I wanted Rutgers to go after, he ended up retiring over the summer. Unfortunately for him, he ended up going to Baylor. But it seemed like a lot of guys on that Ohio offensive line were good and successful. And, I know Rutgers beat up on a MAC team already, but Ohio has been consistently one of the better MAC teams out there. So, yeah, I mean, I just wonder if we'll see him, what we'll see from Rhodes in particular.
We got a question from an Aussie listener. Thanks for listening from down under.
What time is it?
Why is the season? What'd you say?
What time
is Ian also a punter?
Oh yeah, he's probably a prospective recruit. So I'll answer this question for you, Ian. Why is the season so short in college football? A longer season could sort out the best teams better. Well, they're shorter because they're not professionals. In short.
And you see the injury report today? I mean, we're 6 games
both
in.
Of them.
Basically, both sides are like a mash board. I mean,
but this will be the longest season in college football history for big time college football.
College football playoff, like what will they have played? Like 16 games?
There's going to be teams who play 15 or 16 games this year. Yeah. Between conference championship games, if you win your conference champion, let's say you're undefeated, you go 13-0. Then you have the round 1 bye probably. So you have the quarterfinal, semifinal, final.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, probably 16 games.
Mm-hmm.
One of my favorite ways the season could have played out. Obviously, it's not because Notre Dame's not undefeated. But if Notre Dame would have went undefeated, they would have had to play as the 5th seed at best because they're not in the conference.
Well, Army Navy could be in the AAC championship game and then play again, and then one of them might be in a CFP for all we know.
I'm rooting for that chaos. I saw I think it was the Mostly Sports pod on Barstool was talking about it. If both those teams are undefeated, they would obviously both go to the AAC championship game, play each other, then play the following week again. So let's say they both go undefeated. Army wins, goes 13-0. The following week, Navy wins. So now both teams are 13-1. Who makes it, or do both of them make it?
That's crazy.
Who knows?
Either way, I'm rooting for that chaos. Please let it happen. Just it's one
Speaking
time.
of the Australian thing, let's talk about this so-called punter here.
Yeah, man.
Oh my god!
Dude.
Not only decision making to punt too has been terrible.
It's been awful, and I know fans were booing in like the first quarter. I think it was.
It was the first quarter. Yeah,
on their own 30. Like, dude, put the fucking ball. What are we saying?
I think
we were talking about what was it early in the game where this kid can obviously boot the ball pretty well. And they had him do like this weird rolling out to the side, kicking with your opposite side, kicking with the side of your leg, and it ended up kind of being like a crappy punt. Like
it was not a good punt. Their backup center caught it out of bounds.
He's a righty and he's rolling out the opposite side. It's like, what the fuck? Dude, stop getting creative.
I don't get it.
Just kick the ball.
What benefit does that bring? Because I definitely throws off the returner because he's running to his opposite side. But does it go off his leg a little bit differently if he's like rolling to his left and kicking it off the right? I don't know. I'm not a punting guru. Maybe we'll get Corsack or someone else. I know Tim Gleason is a pro kick guy now, so maybe he can give us some insight about that. I don't know. But yeah, I thought Anderson's looked good, especially for a true freshman. That one, and I don't know what he was thinking on that. Or I don't know what anyone was thinking calling that because it didn't go well.
Somehow he averaged 44.1 yards per punt today.
He did have some solid ones, I'll say that.
Yeah, the one
long
was
as
really
61, 9 punts for almost 400 yards.
And it looks worse when you have terrible field position too, and you're just trying to get it to a little bit past midfield. I think some of the boos, to be fair, were coming from the call, maybe, but I think just throwing the ball not past the sticks every darn time. I think at that time we had like a couple completed passes on third down that were like nowhere near getting past the sticks, and I think people were just like, "Boo! Like do something!" And then it mixed in with the punt call, which you got to punt from there, obviously. Yeah. And I'm sure there were some people that wanted to go for it, but I think people were just like, "Dude, what are you doing on offense on third down with these short passes that aren't past the sticks?" Like,
people just start this when crap piles up on it long enough, they just start going. Like you see it in New York, New Jersey, Philly, like they're all like that. I think everybody's getting to the point where it's like that too. No matter anybody, it's just if you see enough of something you don't like, you start booing, and then one person boos, the next person boos, the next person boos. Next thing you know, everybody's booing.
I like Ian answering my question. There are dozens of Australians who can kick 70 yards in our code of football, no problem. We'll probably see around half of them playing in the Power 5 at some point.
Yeah. Jeez.
All right. If anybody has any comments that they'd like to throw in, we'll get them on the screen. I see a lot of them here. I feel like we've kind of covered a lot of this. Where do you guys think we go from here?
Beat UCLA?
Yeah, just get for like I guess Schiano talked about in the presser. Figure out what's going wrong, fix it, and then just go out and beat a bad UCLA team. If you can't look good against UCLA, then I don't know. Then who are you going to look good against the rest of the year?
Now, they should beat UCLA. But, like, I'll admit, like, I watched them last week, obviously, because my other duties for work. And with their backup quarterback, they didn't look god-awful. They actually, like, held them pretty well in the first couple drives. And then their quarterback looks pretty good. Like, so
Right.
I don't think it's as much of a pushover as people think. Like, it's not Purdue, but it is down towards that level.
Do we know if Garbers is healthy?
No, but their backup's better, in my opinion. Justin.
Well, this is kind of the reverse thing. Like, we hope he gets healthy for when he comes to Piscataway.
They play what
Same
tonight?
time, though, I would say, from a Rutgers perspective, can't worry about how bad they are. You got to focus on how good you can be.
Yeah.
Figure that out.
So cool stat too. Teams that cross 2 time zones in the Big Ten, I was told this week, are 1-6. So
I think it's even worse than that. I think it's
it
like
might be
1-9.
worse now. Yeah.
I think the only team that's won is Indiana going to UCLA. Every other team has lost. How many wins do you guys think this team gets now that we're at 4-2, halfway through the season? The remaining schedule: home UCLA, road USC, get a bye, home Minnesota, away Maryland, home Illinois, away Michigan State.
It's hard, man. I was bullish. I was so bullish on this team, and I'm not like I have to collect myself because it's still today with this terrible loss. But I mean, I predicted 9 wins, and now I think just to get to 8, you got to win 4. And the way this team has been, I think I'm at a place where that bullishness, that excitement is kind of gone from me, and I'm kind of just like taking it week by week. Like, let me go to the tailgate and homecoming and just see if they can win and go from there. But you're looking at 7 or 8 wins right now if you can get your head back together. Because if not, you're fighting. I know it sounds reactionary, but like in all honesty, some of these teams, Minnesota, Illinois, Maryland, we should beat looking at them right now as of this week. UCLA, we should. That's 2 wins. I think we get where we want to go there. But then beyond that, I don't know, man. I'm not predicting the 9 or 10 anymore. Definitely not 10. I'm not predicting the 9.
I think 7 is probably my guess at this point, which was basically the win total for the season.
UCLA, like you said, UCLA right now feels like it should beat them. Maryland, and then I guess the last game of the year against Michigan State. Michigan State to me hasn't looked that good either. So who knows? It's definitely a step down from the 8-4 or possibly even 9-3 season I thought they were coming into this. And like I said, if they get to 7, maybe they can get to 8. So there's a reason. They just, like I said, they just really have to just get their stuff together, because if Rutgers can play up to their potential, like we thought they were coming into this year, they could beat UCLA, they can beat Maryland, they can beat Michigan State, they can beat Minnesota. So.
Yeah, I said coming into the season, I said 8-4. I said they would lose to Nebraska, lose to Wisconsin, lose to USC, and then lose a game in November. I just wasn't sure which one. It's weird because technically it's still online, but it doesn't feel like it's still online based on how they have lost these last 2 games and how they performed the first 4 weeks versus the next 2 weeks. So I'm still on that. I'm still on that 8-4 train. Maryland, I agree, looked absolutely horrific against a Northwestern team that has looked really bad. Adam, don't even go there. That has looked not very good at all. Like that, they got stomped. Illinois is going to be a very tough game. Minnesota, I think, is going to be one of those swing games because it's kind of in the inverse, really, where it's one of those teams that's a little bit lower in the Big Ten pecking order currently against Minnesota. So we'll see. But Rutgers still hasn't had a lot of success against them. And it's also, of course, all the storylines between Rutgers and Minnesota basically swapping everything with each other. And then that last game against Michigan State, I mean, Richie and I were talking about it. I think, Craig, you were too at the game. They've kind of always struggled in some of these season finales against Maryland, against Michigan State at times as well. And you're going to East Lansing in late November. It's going to be cold, maybe even snowy. Who knows? And this Michigan State team, I mean, they look like a completely different team week to week. We could see, the good Aiden Childs where he throws for 350 yards and 3 touchdowns, or the bad one where he throws for 3 picks and fumbles a couple times. So I'm still sticking with 8-4. Maybe I'm a little bit too optimistic. As you could probably tell, I'm probably the most optimistic out of any of us consistently. But it's kind of gone to plan, at least how I predicted it, but also kind of not. So I'm just going to stick with my gut and what I predicted preseason and hope that it keeps on going in that train.
I feel like if I say 8, it's just unrealistic at this moment in time. I feel like no one feels it's realistic. So I'll probably say 7. I think late season they're gonna be that typical Rutgers football team, and it's usually against like a Maryland, because Maryland's usually that last game, and it's like they just shit the bed. They just don't care. They're like blah. They're beaten and bruised. But that might be the Illinois game at this point. Because they're a good Illinois team, but UCLA probably 5. After that, it's a guessing game between what 6 and 7 are going to be, but I assume 6 and 7 are probably going to be one of those last 4. I can't see them being USC. I think Illinois is going to be tough. Maryland doesn't look good. Minnesota, who really knows what they are at the moment? And then Michigan State, like you said, Alec, Aiden Childs is up, he's down, he's up, he's down, he's up, he's down. So 7 wins probably. I know someone said Pinstripe Bowl, and I know people have questioned us on Twitter about this. They can be in it again. Per the agreement from the Big Ten and the bowl game, the goal is to have 8 schools in 8 years. Right now, they have 6 schools through the minimum, that they need to have is 6 in 8 years. Right now, they have 4 different schools over the past 4 games. So they technically could throw Rutgers in there again. And the Pinstripe Bowl loves it because they get a giant Rutgers fan base that's down the street to come to the game. So,
yeah.
I think I'm speaking to the choir, though, where coming into the year, Rutgers in the Pinstripe Bowl, it would be a massive disappointment.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Even the win total at 7, in my opinion, would be a massive disappointment. 6 would be an epic failure, in my opinion, and 7 would be a massive disappointment because this is supposed to be like a serious step that's going to like get things going again. Like Mike said, get down the hill. Anything less is it's a failure. It might not be an epic failure, but it's a failure.
Yeah, no, we're not going to have an opportunity presented to us like this again anytime in the near future, with the schedule the way it is, with the team we've brought back, with all of the structural stability the program had, from coordinators to players to we were in like a very unique situation in college football. There's not going to be many teams each year that have this kind of situation, and to squander it is going to be something we look back on and go, how the heck did we only get 7 wins that year? Because next year, tell you what, it's going to be tough to get to a bowl game next year. You look at our schedule, you look at who we're losing. We're losing Holland Pierce, we're losing Wesley Bailey, we're losing Aaron Lewis, we're losing Tyrone Powell, we're losing Robert Longerbeam, we're losing Flip Dixon. Like, this is going to be a new team next year, and we have a schedule that's going to be significantly harder. So I think this is going to go down as a big what could have been year, the way things are, projecting right now. I don't like to say that in the middle of the fight, but I don't see any other way that we don't look back on this season and be like, God damn, we squandered this. We really blew this opportunity.
I hate to be that guy and go there, but I feel like certain people think about 1.0 that same way. Some of those late years in the Big East.
Yeah, you're right. The 2012 season, even though that wasn't Greg, I think it was either 2009 or 2000. There was one year where we could have won a share of the Big East, going up to Stores and winning a game against UConn, and we lost by 20.
Well, that was I think the 2012, wasn't it 2012 where they cleaned our clock? We would have owned it going into the game against Louisville, but because they beat us, then Louisville, we had to go and they called that illegal man downfield penalty, and I was there. But dude, even I know people, this is blasphemous, but even 06, it's blasphemous. But it's like, dude, okay. I remember I showed it to my girlfriend, oh, this is 06. You gotta watch. She's like, well, what was this for? I was like, well, it's just a big game. We still blew some stuff there too. I know it was a step, but dude, when are we gonna bring it home?
Yep, totally agree. I see a lot of Gavin Discord in the chat. You guys blamed Gavin for the bad offense last year.
Eliminate the words Gavin from our vocabulary. It's just, guys, he's gone.
Let him move on.
I think everything has to be time box too. Like last year, think about how little injury issues we had as a team. Who did we lose besides Tyreen Powell? And that was, game 7 or 8 that, was an impact player. This year, we've had multiple guys each week that, miss games. We've had guys dinged up. We've lost guys from the start of the year. And it was ultimately like the crunch time mistakes made by Gavin that were the reason that we didn't hit our true ceiling last year. The reason we didn't beat Ohio State, even though that game ended up, looking worse score-wise than it was. Think of Wisconsin last year. You think of Iowa, we were losing 6-0 going into the fourth quarter. You think of Penn State, we were losing by 1 score going into the fourth quarter. We had so many games that the defense kept us in. We had a much better defense last year. We could just say that at this point. We were much better on defense last year. We were a better team in general.
Yeah, I think around. The defense was much better. We were definitely a better team. We had Needham injury early on, and you had playing tackle. But look, Ethan is a better quarterback than Gavin Wimsatt. I also think that in some of the discourse amongst the fan base, it's like, well, we would have. I mean, in last year, yes, we would have won some games if Gavin was a little more accurate. That Ohio State game, hey, he completed a pass late too, and then Powell goes down, and they come around the end and put it right back on us. I think there was this belief that, well, as soon as you swap out the quarterbacks, as soon as you swap it out, we automatically escalate like that much. And there were still other issues. But that's what I'll say about it. Gavin would not save this team. I know he added a different element in this and that, but Ethan, there were still a lot of balls today that were dropped that he put in the right place. And there's games we won this year because of Ethan. So it's a different conversation.
4 games under 100 yards passing, 9 games under 50% completion percentage. Like, no, we're not doing this right now. Like,
I know we're probably dragging this out a little bit longer than we should, but I looked back just because this week 7 last year was the Michigan State game. Here was the players out. So Chris Long, who was out one of the guys out for the season, Tyler Needham as well, like Larry said, Bo Masco, who ended up not playing until the Pinstripe Bowl, Kassan Abraham, still not really sure what happened with him at the end of his career, but that's a discussion for another day. Carnell Davis, Nazim Brantley, who we know what happened there, Joe DeCroce, and Renee Conga. So that was all the guys that were out. Not a ton of guys that were big contributors. So I probably drew this out a lot farther, but.
Can we talk about our bad luck? Because you said Joe DeCroce, like with the O-line recruits, man. How about Allen? Let's. I don't want to. This isn't an excuse per se, but it's like there are some serious classes of O-linemen that just didn't pan out or went down with injuries, and now we're feeling that depth. I don't know what to chalk that up to, but that kind of sucks. Just because you mentioned that name, I'm like, yeah. What about all those? I was so excited about those O-line recruits that year.
Yeah, 21, 22.
Yeah, man.
We're getting no impact from those guys for the most part.
Gotta hit the portal harder.
And that's huge. You're right, Richie. We have to find a way to do it because the classes aren't panning out. That's tough.
And that goes back to what I was saying before. Like, it's year 5. The depth, the tank should not be. It doesn't have to be filled completely, but you have to have a serviceable backup lineman at least. There's not even a 6th guy.
That's why I don't like how he said that. Well, they're second string for Greg. Come on, you know, second string guys play and they're supposed to make a serious impact.
Here's the class of 2022 where we signed 7 offensive linemen. Taj White, who has replaced Brian Felter this year, who's kind of had mixed results. Nelson Monegro, I think he retired. Medically retired. Joe DeCroce, medically retired. Kobe Asamoah, starter. He's been hit or miss this year. He started off the season grading out really well, but he's really struggled the last few weeks. Jacob Allen, medically retired. Amir Stinnett, he was I think he came into Rutgers at over 400 pounds, and he hasn't made an impact.
That's one of those.
He's been injured too.
Take it, see if we could turn him into something like we did with Pierce.
Yep, and then Dante Chin, who hasn't really made an impact either. So of those 7 guys, we have one starter. Yeah. So
what? One starter out of that, Mike?
One starter out of that group. Yep.
That's brutal. And what? How many viable backups? One other viable backup?
Probably 1 or 2 at most. And then the 23 class, nobody's made an impact. You have John Stone, Muzell Williams, Dominic Rivera, Nick Oliveri.
That's what I don't understand. I thought Nick Oliveri looked decent as a backup guard in camp and in off season. At this point, fuck it. Someone's got to be able to play guard. Anyone.
Even if they just have raw mauler ability in the run game, because that's where we've heard the most. I don't care if he's unpolished. Do something.
Yeah. All right. Well, we've gone on for shockingly right about just dead on an hour. Does anybody have any closing thoughts they want to throw out there before we mercifully snuff out this pod and hopefully turn the page on the season?
I still feel bad for Jay Patel. That's pretty much all I got.
Me too.
Did you guys talk about the so what was it after the Wisconsin 1 yard run from Locke when the guy kicked extra point and the kids caught the extra point?
We did talk about that.
Talked about it.
Did you talk about it? Okay.
Off air?
Or I don't know if we talked about it on air.
Yeah.
Okay, so basically what happened was after Braden Locke's 1 yard touchdown, I think it was when it was their last touchdown of the game. Thank you, man. Adam's really bringing the bangers today. Exhibition 5 days away. Thank you, Dave White. So after that last touchdown, Wisconsin kicks the extra point. The kicker actually kicks it so hard it goes over the net and it goes into the stands. There's a group of like Pop Warner kids in like the third row. They pick up the ball, and the poor equipment guy who's in charge of getting the ball after it is supposed to just lean into the net had to chase them all the way up the stairs until he could get the ball back. It was definitely the most entertaining part of the game.
I do want to say this. I saw this one. They're not going to lose any recruits off of this. Kids don't care about a single game. Kids don't care about a single season, honestly, to be honest. It's not because they're not even there yet, number one. Number two, like all these kids seem pretty solid. We talked about it on the message boards. Like Jakarian Keenan was supposed to visit NC State this week. Canceled that visit. Michael Clayton visited South Carolina. He'll probably never go on another visit again.
He's visiting next week, I believe, right?
Yeah. Braxton Kyle. No, I think he was here today, actually. Braxton Kyle went to visit Georgia. He seems pretty solid still. So, I mean, like, they're not going to lose a kid because of a single game, let alone a single season. It's like a giant misconception.
If we were 2-10 and, it was clear.
Maybe, yeah.
But I think it's pretty clear that the program is at least mostly competitive. Now, if you would have listened to this whole podcast, you'd disagree because we said they're going down in terms of the trajectory. But overall, the program is in a good place. It's just we got to figure this shit out. Like, if this is how we're going to play the season, we're not going to win any more games.
Yeah. So
Greg needs to go into his bat cave and just figure things out. Because there's ways you can just like waste a lot of effort, just like watching film, and not come away with like actionable things. You can point out deficiencies, you can point out where things went wrong, but if you don't have a way to also then make a plan to fix those things and make a plan to kind of game plan around those deficiencies that we can now identify the team has, then it's kind of Sisyphusian, or you're just rolling that ball of wax up and it just keeps rolling back down the hill. So they need to figure this out and come out with actionable items from the film sessions.
In the same vein, that's kind of something that he talked about in the presser on Monday, this past week. He said the most expensive thing as a coach is time. And so you got to allocate, what you can to the amount of hours you get each week. And they're going to have to allocate a lot of hours to just figure out what went wrong, especially in the trenches, and just try to fix it up and get them back to that aggressive team that we saw against Washington and Virginia Tech.
Totally agree. Well, we're over an hour now. To all you sickos who have stuck with us, keep your heads held high because the program is not, we're not going down. It's not, this isn't a dumpster fire, but it is a concerning outcome on top of a concerning game from last week. So let's hope, the coaching staff can figure it out. I have faith in Greg, but I can't say that I haven't wavered from that, at least somewhat, given how today went.
Some of us still have baseball season, so there's still positivity.
Yeah, some of us do.
Jeez.
Some of us don't. So thanks for that. That's all I got. Thanks for tuning in once again. We'll have a recap on Monday, and we'll have a preview for UCLA. But for me and the guys, this has been another live show edition post game of the Knight Report podcast. Signing off.